death metal didn't catch on in Denmark in the late 80s the same way it did in other countries. And black metal never really caught on until 10, 12 years ago, basically. Back in the 90s, there were like a handful of bands, and that's it.
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 238 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I'm welcoming to the show for the first time Hellpig, known to friends and family as Bjørn Bihlet of the band Horned Almighty out of Denmark. Many of you who listen to the podcast regularly will already know that their new album, Contagion Zero, is pretty high up on my radar, certainly going to be high up on my list of favorite albums of the year. And this was an opportunity for Bjørn and I to discuss the making of that record, the band's evolution since their beginnings in the 90s, and we explored various other topics, including his views on the modern-day black metal scene in general. And we also spoke about why Denmark's black metal scene in the 90s never rose to the same prominence as Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Great catching up with him. Horned Almighty is a band that I feel very strongly fly too far under many people's radars, and I aim to fix that. Before we get to that conversation, though, I don't have a premiere on the Sphere, but I do have something pretty goddamn special. Our good friends over at Gutter Prince Cabal are going to be releasing a New Zealand-based occult death metal band's debut EP on September the 6th. The band is called Ifrit. The EP is going to be called Haunting Carnal Grounds, and the song is Salts of Penitence. You just got your little eardrums scrubbed by Ifrit out of New Zealand. Their brand new track is entitled Salts of Penitence, and you can hear that and more on their upcoming debut EP, Haunting Carnal Grounds. That gets released on September the 6th via the fine folks at Gutter Prince Cabal, and I will post links for the Gutter Prince Cabal Bandcamp as well as the Ifrit Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. I believe pre-orders for Ifrit are available right now, and Gutter Prince Cabal has put out so many great bands over the course of the last 12 months, many of whom you will have already heard here. You do need to go over there and show them some love, and of course when you do, you let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere who sent you. If you are new to the podcast and you've not already done so, then make sure you slap the subscribe button on your platform of choice like it owes you money. You can also follow me on the socials. You can support the podcast by buying some merch off the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store. And you should be aware by now that I am a member, a blooded-in member of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, who are dedicated to bringing you high-quality podcasting content from Monday to Sunday. We kick off your week with another installment of Horror Wolf 666 every Monday, brought to you by Brandon Legion. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday. Every Wednesday, Sensei Mike Hill brings you another episode of his long-running series, Everything Went Black. We double up your pleasure every other Wednesday with Cheyenne of the band Trivax and his podcast, Iblis Manifestations. On Necro Thursday, Mike Hill returns alongside his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scandado and Professor Jeff Kashid for another episode of Necromaniacs, one of my absolute favorites of the week. And also on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, we've got the sinister minister Carl Haikara bringing you a journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knox. When the interview segment of this podcast is done, don't go anywhere, because by popular demand, I've got my good friend Marco of Stellar Master Elite joining me for a rip-roaring installment of the weekly news rant. Until then, though, sit back and join me in welcoming to Into the Necrosphere, Hellpig of Horned Almighty. So as we were off air, I was talking to you about my journey of rediscovery of the Horned Almighty back catalogue, and you mentioned that there were a couple that you kind of felt were a little rushed and would maybe do differently. Which albums are those, out of interest?
The first one that comes to mind is definitely our second album, The Devil's Music.
Devil's Music,
from 2006. I think we really rushed through the songwriting. We kind of found our own sound by then, I guess, and we're kind of in love with what we were doing, and that just made us write really quickly. And I don't think there was a lot of filtering in the riff department or the arrangement of the songs. So that one, had we spent like 4 or 5 months letting the songs ferment a little bit, I think the output would be better.
Let me ask you a question. When you say there was no filtering of the riffs or anything like that, did you work with a producer for that album?
Nope.
Yeah.
Actually, Contagion Zero is the first album we've ever done where we actually went into a real studio, quote unquote. We've always been very DIY, recorded in the rehearsal space. Since The Devil's Music, we've had a bunch of outside help for mixing and mastering. But the whole tracking process and everything we've basically done ourselves from day one, since the first 7-inch, I guess.
Legion, this is old Jackson just cutting in here for a split second to say you're about to hear some technical gremlins crop up in my microphone. I only discovered this when I was editing the episode together. No idea what caused it. I didn't change any settings or do anything differently. So my suspicion is that StreamYard is to blame. Either way, I will be tracking down the culprit and making sure that they are shaved, sterilized, and destroyed. It does correct itself in a couple of minutes. It may show up later on in this conversation again, but hopefully it's not going to take away from your enjoyment of what is a very fun chat, which right now we're going to get back to.
It's interesting because I've had this conversation, and actually tomorrow, on the date we're recording this, on my news rant, I got into this with Carl Hikara of Still Knox. The idea that, from my perspective, I feel like it's better for a band to have a producer in the studio with them. I get that it's not always possible, but I if I put myself in the shoes of a musician, somebody in a band, I think there's value in someone telling you, or having the guts to tell you, that riff sucks, or this part of the song isn't working, or this isn't right, or this isn't right.
Yeah.
What was it? I mean, I granted, obviously, your earlier stuff has been very DIY, but I guess first of all, was it a decision from you guys, like a conscious decision to, with Contagion Zero, do it differently, be in a proper studio, and kind of almost go the traditional route, rather than do something that was in line with World of Tombs or Necro Spirituals?
Yeah, definitely. Let's just say we spent 6 years writing the album before this one, To Fathom the Master's Grand Design. And I think we tracked that album in 2 or 3 days. No click track, no nothing, just in the rehearsal space. I think we were so sick and tired of the songs by the time we were recording that we rushed through the recording. And it sounds all right, but it definitely does not sound the way I envisioned it when we wrote the music. So going into Contagion Zero, we made a decision pretty early on to go to a proper studio, have outside ears telling us when a take was shitty, or if the tempo was off, or if something needed tweaking, instead of relying on our own ears, because there's definitely things on the album before this one that I would change 100 times over, despite it actually being a fairly decent album. So it was a conscious decision. Yeah.
Remind me, who was your producer on this record then?
It's a guy. It's actually a local guy. He does. There's a Danish death metal band called Beast, however you want to pronounce it. That's been making a lot of noise in the underground for the last 5-6 years, and he actually did all their albums. And by chance, we got to speaking, and turned out he opened a studio, his own studio, like 10 minutes from where I live. So it's kind of convenient, and we liked some of the stuff he was doing for Based, and then also some of the other productions he's done for. He does a lot of stuff, both big and small, and also things outside of metal. But he's very well versed in production and professionally trained. So, and he knows the band, knows what we're going for. And we had a few conversations. I visited him at the studio before we even started tracking or anything, just describing what we were after. Just so he had an idea. We're not after a modern death metal sound. We're after something that is raw yet clear, and sounds like musicians playing, which I think.
Out of interest, when you were talking to him about what you were looking for, did you have any Horned Almighty record in mind as a reference point to say, that's about as close as we've come to what we want to do, or the direction we want to take, the sound we want to have as a band?
No, actually not. We didn't have any Horned Almighty albums that would work as a reference, because as you may have noticed, the music we've done this time around is a little bit different than what we've done for the last many albums. We went both forward and backward, so to speak. So we had a couple of other references, actually a few newer ones that had the production values we were looking for. We referenced the latest Watain album, which sound incredible to my ears. which is it sounds fabulous. It's a really, really nice production, very open and organic. So that was one of them. Some of the albums we did earlier sound great, but not necessarily for the songwriting we were doing on this one. So we're definitely very, very pleased with Necrospirituals and Well of Tombs and Contaminating the Divine, which came out 15 years ago. Yeah, still very satisfied with those albums and the way they turned out, but they're all different. So
I would definitely. I was curious about it because, again, as I said, I've been listening to all the records in the run up to us having this conversation. I think probably besides Contagion Zero, my favorite is Necrospirituals. And I clicked where I'd heard the record for the first time. You guys had appeared on a Terrorizer cover CD, like back in the day when cover CDs were still a thing. Yeah. And that's where I was like, oh shit, man, this is where I had heard. I can't even remember what song that included. But that was that was kind of what introduced me to Horned Almighty. And then for whatever reason, you guys flew under my radar a little bit. And as you no doubt saw when you saw me rediscover the band on the news rant, I heard the first single, and just every single track that you guys put out after that just impressed me more and more. But I want to just come back to the question of having a producer in the studio. I guess it's one thing having the idea or the concept to have a producer present. It's another thing in practice. What was it like having somebody kind of looking over your shoulder and telling you, you're going to need to redo that take? Kind of not bossing you around necessarily, but running the show.
That was actually a very welcome change. What it does, it lets you focus on purely the performance. So for me, it's about playing guitar and playing it well as I can, and not focusing so much on pressing start and stop and everything, and listening back to my own takes. He's listening with me on the fly and stopped the, I wanted to say tape, that's not really the case, but stops the recording if something sucks, if there's a noise or a squeaky sound or whatever. So having some quality control, let's call it that, was definitely a very, very nice experience. And I think I speak for all of us when we talk about that. The thing is, we took our time recording this one. And we actually, I think we had a total of 12 days in the studio just for tracking, which we've never done before. All the other albums have been done in, I don't know, something between 16 and 36 hours total. So it was definitely another experience. And one of the outcomes is also that we're here like 9-10 months after the master. We got the final master. And listening back, there's basically not a thing I would change. Not from performance or production, nothing. It's pretty damn close to what I envisioned when we wrote the songs.
I was about to say, I'm guessing when you got back the finished product from the studio, you were pretty pleased as can be.
Yeah, definitely. All of us very, very pleased with the final result. The mixing process took a while. We got the first, our producer's first take on it, which was kind of more modern. A lot more modern, let's call it that. And I kind of pulled it back and said, fuck all the samples, let's just go completely analog. That sounded cool as well, but was kind of a bit too much. So we found a middle ground where we got as analog as we can, and tweaked a few things. Not tweaked. There's not a lot of editing or anything going on this album. But there's a little bit of help with some samples mixed in on the kick drums and the snare. But other than that, everything is what you hear. There's no amp sims or everything. So what I recorded on my amp with the cabinet in the studio is actually what you hear. Same goes for bass and all the drums. So,
and then you guys were still, you're still in the practice of being in the band room together a couple of times a week, and that's where the lion's share of what you write is completed. That's where the creative process takes place.
That used to be the case. The last album we did came out in January 17th, 2020. And we had a bunch of gigs lined up, but what do you know? 2 months later, everything shuts down. Less than 2 months later. So I started writing right off the bat. We had a feeling this wasn't going to change. We were not able to support this album in the way we actually wanted to. So the first riff tapes I have for the new album is from like late March 2020. So we started instantly. And one of the major changes this time around is that we didn't write as much together as we usually do. I kind of built the skeletons for the songs at home in my little home studio setup, which is not really a studio. It's like a sound interface and a couple of speakers, and that's it, and a door, of course. And sent it around to the guys, took it to rehearsal, and then we always rehearse the stuff. We need to make sure that we can actually play it and that it actually sounds the way I envision it sounding. And that the tempo feels right in the rehearsal room, and we actually did a lot of testing before we went to the studio, figuring out what's the right pace of this song and kind of dialing in the tempos of the songs. This is also the first time we ever recorded with a click track, so that was a new thing as well. So there was a lot of time spent on pre-production. We actually did a complete pre-production of all the songs.
Yeah.
So
I've mused about the benefit of bands being in the rehearsal space together and what that leads to in terms of creativity. How did you find the difference? I mean, it's clear you're obviously very happy with the end result on Contagion Zero, but
yeah,
how did you find it, having been used to for such a long period of time, being in the rehearsal space with the guys when you do your writing, to it being a more solitary endeavor for reasons that are quite obvious? Obviously, you mentioned COVID.
Being in the rehearsal space, 4 guys wanting to achieve the same thing but having different opinions about how to get there can take a lot of time. I'm very opinionated when it comes to the music. So for me, it worked really well. I was able to construct the songs the way I saw them, take them to the rehearsal space, and then we were tweaking things together. And that's not to say that there wasn't a couple of riffs that came up in the rehearsal space, but they were not part of the actual putting together of the songs.
Yeah,
that was just riffs taken out of a jam, basically, recorded with an iPhone or whatever, and took it home and then recorded it as part of the song. So riffs came together that way for the songwriting, but putting the final structure to everything was done at home. But you can actually hear that we have rehearsed these songs quite a lot. There's a lot of signature drum thingy-majingy, playfulness on the hi-hats at specific times and all that, and that all came up in the rehearsal room. I don't do really intricate drum tracks or anything, so we had quite a bit of time to play around with it and figure out how to spice things up and everything. But being able to sit for 5 or 6 hours and delve into your own songwriting actually makes the arrangements more intricate and more interesting, because I approach maybe vocal patterns different than our lead singer Simon does. So when I come up with like a proxy vocal line screechy thing in the arrangement, he hears it differently than I do, and once he comes with his lyrics, that forces him to do different patterns than he normally would, which makes for some very interesting results. So all in all, it was a very positive experience, and I think we're going to go forward, at least trying to do a couple of songs for the next album once we get that started in the same way. Building a skeleton, a foundation, and then taking it to...
and then evolving it from there. I guess it also helps that, I mean, you, Simon, and Jacques have been working together for over 2 decades now. So you must have, a pretty deep understanding of the other person's style, their approach, their strengths, their weaknesses. Like, there's definitely some... I mean, that must play a role in how you're able to evolve those songs.
Definitely. Simon and I have been playing together. Next year, we've been playing black metal together for 30 years.
Wow.
We started out together in 1995. Had a band going for 5.5 years, and then that kind of died, and we started to we tried to reboot the band, and that didn't work, so we turned it into HORNED Almighty, which is basically a continuation of the old band. So yeah. And Jacques we've been playing with for 20. He's been in the band for 21 years, I guess. So yeah, so we know each other really well, and we're not the most active live band, but we know where we have each other in a live situation, and we know when something's we're in the pocket. Let's call it that. The brakes are tight. Everything. We don't have to look at each other. We can. Yeah. We definitely know where we have each other in a live situation, and also I know if I come up with a riff that I think is cool, and I know the other ones are gonna hate it, I'm just leaving it at home because I know their tastes. I'm gonna challenge it from time to time, but to a large extent, we have a similar view on what HORNED Almighty is and what it's supposed to be.
Now, that band you guys were in before, that's Mararit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did you need to do a reset there? Like, what was the catalyst to change, or to kind of change the name, become HORNED Almighty, and start fresh?
I can't even remember why we broke up the band in the first place. I think. I'm not sure, actually. I can't remember. I think the songwriting we were doing, we did the 2 demos in 96 and 1 in 98, then an EP in 99, and the last demo/EP in the year 2000. And the songwriting, I was kind of young at that point, 20, 21, and very ambitious with the songwriting. And once we started writing after the last recording we did, it got so intricate and so challenging to play that it was kind of hard to even play it. Mm-hmm. And then the other guys lost interest. They lived like an hour and a half away anyway, so we were only rehearsing on weekends whenever we had time. So they just fell apart. And just after that fell apart, we did another project together, just me and Simon. So we've been active together nonstop since '95. But once the reason for starting HORNED Almighty was actually the late 90s were kind of not the best years for traditional black metal, in my opinion. So when we started HORNED Almighty, the idea was to go back and do something that was rough around the edges and harsh and primitive and ugly. I think we actually used the term ugly black metal for the first couple of years. So that was the initial thought.
Why do you think black metal took such a turn at the end of the 90s? Because I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I've got I think there's a couple of key bands and key releases that helped turn the tide. But there was a period there where I think black metal was in real danger of just disappearing up its own rectum. Morgan from Marduk said it best. It's like, he always wanted Marduk to be a fist in the face of God. He never wanted it to be about guys sitting by the riverside crying. No. And there was just too many of those types of bands. Like, there was a real, let's call it what it should be called. There was a real pussiness that had started to creep into black metal from sort of 96, 97.
Definitely. There was a couple of bands who commercialized it. There's no secret that Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir were good examples of very successful black metal bands who got very popular. And I guess there was both labels and other artists that smelled money. So adding a lot of naked women and keyboards to your music and clean production, they think that a lot of people thought they could do the same thing. And that ruined it for a while, in my opinion. That's not what I ever wanted to hear, to listen to. When I got into black metal, I was attracted to the harshness and the rawness and the, to a large extent, the theatrics of it. It felt serious, so that's why I got into it. So gothy flannel shirts and
It was the flannel shirts that got me. Like I can get, Dimmu Borgir. I sort of fell out of love with them a little bit, and frankly, when I saw them at Inferno this year, I was like, oh shit! Now I remember why I used to really like this band. Cradle of Filth, different story. I remember that Duskiner Embrace music video when that came out, and the guy standing there in like a crushed velvet shirt and a cravat playing guitar, and I was just like, this is so fucking lame. Because you and I are the same age, and I suspect we probably went a similar route when it comes to getting into black metal. But question for you, living in Denmark, how much were you influenced by the scenes in Norway and in Sweden when you were getting into black metal, when you were starting off as a musician?
That's two different questions, because that's not when I was starting as a musician. That came a long time before I got into black metal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I started playing the guitar in like 88.
You were 8 years old?
Yeah. After school recreational something, I guess. And there was a grown-up who played the guitar, and I was intrigued by it. So he taught me a few things. And for my 10th birthday, I mowed the lawn for the entire summer, and then I got my first electric guitar. So I started playing the electric guitar in '89, and started playing in bands pretty much. When I got that.
So, what were the first songs you learned to play?
I actually think there's a few Sabbath songs, but the first one I remember was I think it's called Peaches and Diesel. It's from Eric Clapton's Slow Hand album.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have no idea why, but I grew up with Clapton playing in the household. So
yeah.
And I like a lot of his earlier stuff, and some of the Yardbird stuff.
The first thing that I'm not a particularly good guitarist, but I started to play guitar when I was about probably 11, 12 years old. The first thing I ever learned how to play was Am I Evil? And I'm just thinking about that now because I was listening to Live Shit yesterday, and there's a version that they do of that song on there. And again, it's been years since I've listened to that song, but I was listening to the riff, and I was remembering like how good I felt like being able to do that riff like myself for the first time, like dun 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 dun. So yeah, that's hence why I was curious what the first songs were that you played, and then. When did your taste in music turn towards heavier stuff?
I think I was always attracted to it. I still have the originals Paranoid 7-inch that I got from my dad had in his collection, and I was infatuated with it already by 6-7 years old. And I got Volume 4 with Black Sabbath from one of his co-workers when I was 8. So I was always attracted to the harshness and the guitar and the darker stuff. And then I got into Metallica through a friend's big brother. I think the first album I heard was actually... I think the first song I heard was For Whom the Bell Tolls. And then
which is a perfect song to be introduced to Metallica on.
Exactly, and it's doable on guitar as well. So so it's the bass line that's the difficult part in that song. So doing the guitar was not all that difficult. And then we started messing around with bands pretty early on. Actually, the first band where we did a cover song of Whom the Bell Tolled was actually called Death Breath back in 1990.
Death Breath. Those Death Breath records got released, or was it like a different? Is this a different Death Breath?
Yeah. This what I'm talking about. It was just a coincidence that we called our first band when I was 11 years old or 10 years old. Called it Death Breath. It's just I was so amused when Nick Anderson and Scott from Repulsion came out and did Death Breath. I just
yes, and that album was called Stinking Up the Night.
It's a
one that they brought out.
Fabulous.
Fucking great record.
I have the poster right beside me. So
yeah. No, when you mentioned that, I was like, Jesus, did you play in Death Breath?
Oh no, I didn't. No, I didn't. It was just a funny little caveat. So, but anyway, then I kind of skipped all the Iron Maidens and the Judas Priest and the Accepts and all that. And once I heard And Justice for All, completely floored. And just before a summer vacation with my parents going by car to France, it's like a 15-hour drive. I got the money to get a CD for my Discman, and I asked the guy at the record shop what should I get. I asked him for the heaviest he had, and he gave me the D-Side W.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that was in 91, and I was sold. I didn't understand what I was hearing, but I loved it. So, here we are, 30 odd years later.
I can talk for fucking hours about that first Deicide record. Like that to me is just, it's the most perfectly captured blast of just complete and utter anger, aggression, menace, testosterone, like this. It's just perfect death metal to me. I don't think there's been so many great death metal records that have been recorded since, but there's just nothing that gives me the same feeling that record does.
Those two first,
including anything. I mean, I like Legion, but to me, it's that first one. It just hits me.
Yeah, I actually think I like Legion a little better.
Oh, really?
It's just more chaotic. The thing is, I didn't know the first time I heard Legion a year later, I guess. I didn't understand it. It was so chaotic to my ears. So I didn't understand it right away, but I loved it anyway. So I bought it, and it resonated just perfectly with what I had in mind musically.
Yeah.
Took it also, but I got it. Yeah.
Those were also the days, and you mentioned loving the theatrics of black metal, but I mean, those were also the days when, I was legitimately fucking terrified of Glenn. I thought he was the baddest dude on the face of the earth. Exactly. And I remember seeing him on a documentary about evil music, and he's sitting there talking about how he's possessed, and how he's in Deicide because he wants to gain entrance into the 7 gates of hell. The guy was just a fucking wild man. Absolute wild man. And then you hear the vocals on their first album and on Legion. And one thing I'll definitely give you on Legion, I mean, he sounds pissed off on the first record. I would argue if you take Repent to Die and In Hell I Burn, like he takes it like one step further on those 2 tracks.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct about Glenn. He's still a hero of mine, even though he's a grandpa now. He still had that persona. I saw them in '95 on the Once Upon the Cross tour, and he was just pissed off and angry, and that cold stare from the stage. He didn't say anything. They just played, and it was menacing. So still in love with Deicide.
The craziest thing is I've seen them many times. The best performance I saw him give was, did you see that Eric put it out probably about 15 years ago, that live video called When London Burns? I actually played support on the Danish show. Oh, really?
An old death metal band I played in. Yeah, we did the local support for Deicide, and who who was supporting. Archon and Faustus, I guess, were supporting.
It was Archon and Faustus. You're 100% right.
We got to see the sound check with Dave Suzuki on lead guitar and everything. That was just awesome. And I got to meet Glenn and talk to him and everything. He's the nicest guy. So
yeah. No, I've met him once very briefly. Mm-hmm. I've spent a birthday with Steve, and I've interviewed him twice for Chronicles of Chaos. But I remember standing in the queue at the Mean Fiddler, and Glenn is walking past. He's just walking past everybody queuing, and no one is really noticing him because he's walking with this big grin on his face. And I look down, and there's like a half-drunk bottle of Jack Daniels in his hand, and I knew. This is going to be a show to remember. But I was always disappointed that they never stuck with that Dave Suzuki lineup, because I thought what they presented on stage that night was about as close to perfect as I've ever heard them sound. They were incredible.
They had something to prove, definitely. On that tour, they had something to prove. The Hotman brothers just left, and they brought those two stand-in guys, which they were at that point. They had something to prove, and they were menacing. It was an awesome show. And those two, Jago and Dave Suzuki, they are pure professionals. They learned the set in 12 hours? Yeah. Here we go. 3 weeks of touring. Let's get it on.
Well, they did Christ Denied right at the end of the show, and I don't even think they'd rehearsed it. The dudes just knew it. They just played. I mean, because he says something on the video. I can't remember exactly what it is, but he says something to the effect of we played this thing once this afternoon or some bullshit like that. But dude, what a fucking incredible show. Now, question for you is when did the interest in black metal start?
94. I can't remember exactly what piqued my interest. I hadn't read the famous Kerrang magazine or anything. I just think I stumbled upon, I think it was a Dark Throne album, Under Funeral Moon, in the local music store, and saw the cover and thought, what the hell is that? This doesn't look like death metal, but it looks mean and it looks dark. And brought it home and thought this sounded like a shitty demo recording, which it does, but it's for a purpose. And after a few listens, I actually got it, understood what they were doing, and then downward spiral, digging deeper, figuring out what else is there, and especially the year 94 was a good year. The Emperor debut came. We got that right away. What else? I think the Gorgoroth debut came. We listened to that. So, and we got the Bursum, of course, and the Mysterious, Dum Satanas. All those albums we just consumed as soon as we learned about them or heard about them. So it was a completely new world. And the thing is, some of the black metal guys back in Norway had a point. There was a lack of theatrics in death metal at the time. Yeah. If you look at a band like Afflicted from Sweden, standing in a cornfield in hippie t-shirts or hippie shirts or whatever it was, that wasn't me. I wanted the Darkness of Evil. I wanted the Glenn Benson covered in blood. And death metal wasn't doing that anymore. But black metal was. It took a little bit of adjustment because the music is a different thing. It's a different game. But Instant Love.
Yeah.
I understood the I don't know what it's called, but it's more about the feeling than the complexity, let's call it that. And that resonated with me also when writing music. So yeah, I think what I liked about it at that age, I was just remember I was around 15 and a teen with a big T and long hair dyed black and wanted something evil and dark and You're not gonna get that from Obituary at that time. You're gonna get that from Mayhem, or you're gonna get that from Ifrit, or you're gonna get that from Darkflow. So, yeah.
Let me ask you something that I'm sure you've been asked in other interviews before, but considering the fact that Denmark spawned, arguably one of the original black metal bands in Merciful Fate, why do you think that Denmark, even though it's closely adjacent geographically to other other countries where black metal was exploding, why do you think black metal never exploded in terms of a scene, or at least like majorly influential bands in the second wave, like Finland and Norway and Sweden are done?
I actually don't know. I just think maybe we're just hopelessly behind. Death metal didn't catch on in Denmark in the late 80s the same way it did in other countries, and black metal never really caught on until 10, 12 years ago, basically. Back in the 90s, there were like a handful of bands, and that's it. We were there. There was a band called Apollyon. There was Denial of God, who most people know. They were kind of like the OGs in Danish black metal. And not much else. A few other bands, but none of them did albums back then. So I don't know. It didn't really catch on until 10, 12 years ago, which is kind of odd. So I have no idea.
Well, I do remember, when we think of like Danish bands, I do remember Ex Mortem's Labyrinths of Horror being pretty big in my circle in South Africa. And obviously there was Conqueror as well. Conqueror was especially, what's the name, Sexual Affective Disorder. And for me, particularly, that track that they included on the Nuclear Blast, Death is Just the Beginning 3 Daybreak. Like, that's just knuckle dragging perfection. Oh. There was Dominus. The first Dominus record was fucking awesome. I remember seeing that on MTV, Headbangers Ball, just loving it. But yeah, never the kind of black metal scene that you had in, as I said, in Finland or in Norway or in Sweden. So you guys were sort of loners, or I mean, at least initially for you when you were discovering this, did you have friends and stuff at school that were into this, or were you just forging your own path and discovering these things by yourself?
With the death metal thing, I discovered it on my own, and after a while, found a few like-minded people. Actually, one guy from my old school, and then in high school, found a few others and met some people at shows. And eventually met Simon in '95, who was also into this stuff and had been for a couple of years at that point as well. So we clicked instantly because we liked exactly the same stuff. So, so can you repeat the question?
I was about to say you've caught me out there because I'd asked it and I was kind of my gears were starting to turn to what I wanted to follow up on. What I did want to follow up with you on is how did you and Simon meet, and like what was that first meeting like?
I actually had a part-time job working with his brother, his little brother, who was actually into metal as well at that point, and I think he mentioned that he had an older brother. They lived pretty close to where I lived, so I just came by for a visit and saw his record collection, and we started talking. So it came pretty natural and pretty quick. We started hanging out and drinking beers and listening to primarily death metal at that point, some black metal. So and before long, 4 or 5 months, we decided to start a band. At that point, I don't think he had sung in anything before. So it was kind of like trial and error. I hadn't played drums for a couple of years, so got into the rehearsal space and I recorded everything myself on a 4-track tape machine, mixed it down, and Simon did the vocals, and we were happy with what we had. We had something. So it wasn't great, and it's never been released. And it never will be. You're
putting that in your will and testament, like, okay, The day they put me 6 feet under is when people can actually hear this.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take it with me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's interesting what you say about Simon never having done vocals when you met him, because I mean he is a fucking formidable vocalist, especially now. You know, and I know he's 2 years away from turning 50, but his voice on Contagion Zero sounds absolutely superb.
He sounds better than ever. Definitely. But he has experience. He has great technique. He's done a fuckload of albums, both with Ex Mortem and Horn Almighty, and his other band Temple of Scorn, which is like a doomy incantation-ish death metal band. So he keeps practicing. Turns up for rehearsals, which is kind of rare for vocalists, but that's that keeps up his game.
But to say, keeps the vocal cords practiced and greased up for action. Yeah. What is it about the friendship that you guys have built over the years that works so well? Like, you know what, like, you know, you're a band that's not really had much by way of lineup changes. You know, you guys are pretty stable. But from what you're saying, it feels like it's definitely you and Simon that are the nucleus of Horn Almighty. And what is it? Well, what's the secret to what's kept you guys together for 3 decades?
Being good friends to begin with. It's not just about the band. Never having any kind of financial success with this is also a helping factor. And then we, to a large extent, agree on where to take it, what to do, and how we're going to get there. So from a band perspective, that's one thing. And the second thing is we've never gotten tired of doing this. And we still are not tired of doing this after 30 years. We still think it's fun, and it's an accomplishment when you create a song that makes your own hair stand up on your arm or in the back of your neck, and then playing it and listening to it, and it's actually working, and then recording it, and it sounds even better. Then that's a prize in and of itself. So that's very gratifying, and we share that sentiment. So that's definitely the reason, and the same goes for Shaq, who's been with us, basically since day one.
Yeah. You mentioned not having any financial success with the band. Did you have expectations to the contrary when you started Horn Almighty?
Never. But the fact that we've never made much on this, so there's never been a financial discussion, and money seems to be a problem for most people, and since there's no money, there's no problem. And we're still having fun with it. That's basically I think that's the secret to keeping something like this going for so long.
So how do you feel about the response to Contagion Zero so far? You know, obviously you got me and the Legion, you know, firmly behind the record. You know, I know I do actually know a lot of people who have come out and, you know, are really digging this. I feel like this album needs to be pushed under people's noses more, because if I think about where black metal is as a genre, as a scene right now, it feels like the right time for this sort of record to be released.
I completely agree, and that was also one of the goals with actually doing a record that's kind of back to basics, back to something that is raw and old school. The thing I have a problem with these days is that black metal have become kind of like a catch-all genre. Everything with screechy vocals is labeled black metal these days. And that's not how I see it. Black metal is, to me at least, is more of I can feel when it's done right, and I can hear it from a band when it's done, and they understand what my definition of black metal is. I can hear if they have a similar understanding of it. And what we're getting now is kind of a resurgence in the commercialization of black metal. Now bands can go around. Now we're eco black metal. Now we're happy black metal, and that's kind of contrary to the whole idea.
The thing that fucked me off the most, and you know, I'm a fairly live and let live kind of person. If you know, to each their own. If you want to dig something, dig it. And I still feel this way to a degree about the band I'm about to run down now. But when I heard somebody refer to this fucking atrocious band called Agriculture as ecstatic black metal, that to me was just like that is literally the antithesis of black metal. Like that's where the gatekeeper in me wakes up and goes, no, fuck this. This, you know, call this whatever you want.
Yeah,
it's not fucking black metal, and it has no place in the scene.
Exactly the band I was going to mention. And to be honest, I've never heard them, and I have no interest.
Count yourself lucky. It's fucking it's genuinely atrocious. It's one of the worst things I've ever heard. I would go as far as to say I'd listen to my daughter's Olivia Rodrigo CDs before I listen to that shit.
Fair and square. I haven't heard it, so I have no opinion about what the music is, but I know from reviewers and from the press that they call it black metal, which is kind of like false advertising. That's not what it is, at least in my opinion. Maybe I have a stuck-up old school opinion about what black metal is, but it's not all-encompassing. I don't think so. I agree. Black metal is composed of two words. It's black and it's metal. So it needs to be black. It needs to be dark, and it needs to be metal. That's the two primary things when you do black metal.
I would also make the argument, and there are exceptions to this for sure, but I would also make the argument that black metal, by and large, needs to have an occult undercurrent to it, at a minimum. Like you don't have to be. You know, you don't have to be full bore, you know, like Glenn Benton or, you know, I mean, we can talk about a lot of like, you know, hardcore satanic, you know, black metal bands, of which, you know, you guys have been in that camp as well. You don't have to be completely over the top and extreme when it comes to the Satanism element of it. But I'm sorry, it has to be present to a certain degree. Otherwise, you know, like I said, there are exceptions. I think Ultha, you know, are a band that I think do black metal really well, and they steer clear of the Satanism stuff. Fine, but it's a very, very rare exception where a band will successfully play black metal that I regard as black metal, and they don't at least have like one finger, you know, dipped in Satan's bloody chalice.
That's the reason I called it. I called it. When I said black metal, I said black needs to be dark.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily. It needs to have the occult undercurrent. I completely agree. But a band like Emperor counts as black metal in my book. From the second album on, it's not really satanic. It's more kind of Luciferian in some way. But it's still dark and twisted, and that's what it needs to be. In my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. My friend Dale from Cult Never Dies, he's spoken about this a fair bit, and one of the things that he was talking about was gatekeeping in black metal, and how he's not opposed to it, and I agree, especially in the face of stuff like Agriculture, Death Heaven, Dawn Raid. I mean, you know, communist black metal. Death Heaven, you know, I know nowadays people don't really call them black metal anymore, but certainly when fucking whatever it's called, Sunbather or whatever trash they released, you know, they were calling that black metal. That it's anything but. It's fucking awful. I mean, you may as well call Tool black metal if you're going to call that black metal.
Exactly my point. So the thing is, if you call something black metal, I have an expectation about what I'm going to listen to.
Yeah.
And if that is not met, it's not black metal in my book. And that's not necessarily the bands that are labeling themselves, you know, happy black metal or whatever. It's as much a press problem, I guess. labeling everything they don't know what to label. Otherwise, they label it as black metal.
Yeah,
which is a huge mistake in my book.
I do find also, and not to dunk on the press too much, but I do find an awful lot of people in the press nowadays. There's some salty dogs, old heads that have been doing it for a while, and you can, generally speaking, you can trust their opinions. But there's an awful lot of the younger generation that are doing it, and I frankly feel, and now I really will sound like a cranky old man, I feel like they're doing it because they're not good to do it. They're not clever enough or smart enough to do anything else. So they've kind of drifted into music journalism, quote unquote. But what they do is just the laziest, most hackneyed fucking nonsense. And there's absolutely no denying that there's money that gets passed around from record labels to these guys to push certain bands, which is why the same shit bands are at the top of every year best list. And what I love is that over the last couple of years, and COVID really accelerated this because it started pushing podcasts. Gave podcasts like mine an opportunity alongside podcasts like Iblis Manifestations and things like that to really start to do our own thing. I feel like this what we're creating here is kind of going back to that almost sort of it's like the modern equivalent of zines. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Dale said this as well. It's like there's the zine culture of the 90s, where we were trading real underground cult shit, and there was sort of this irreverence to the way that those zines were written. You find that on podcasts now, and that to me is quite exciting. I like the fact that there is at least an alternative to the I wouldn't call it the mainstream metal press, but you know what I mean, like the standard metal press.
Exactly, I agree. I've been listening to your podcast. I've been listening a lot to Alan Averill from Primordial podcast. He's also an old opinionated asshole, which is nice. It's nice to have someone you agree with when it comes to metal, at least. So, and I agree. The long form interviews, that you're doing, and that also Alan is actually doing with some guests, is kind of like in the old days. And I agree with the lazy journalism. I see it primarily in reviews nowadays. One thing is that since our last album, I think we have kind of like half of the reviews that we used to. So I don't think there's a big neither sign nor web sign culture anymore. It's more, I think it's more just social media. I don't know who reads it.
I actually honestly don't know who reads webzines, period. Because I don't. So I basically have a couple of, I now. So I said earlier I'm going to sound old. Now I'm really going to sound old. I read the Daily Telegraph and I read Zero Hedge. Those are the main websites that I read. Yeah. I read Metal Storm for the news rant, but generally speaking, there's no webzine that I read. There's nothing. If I want to see a review on something, I'll watch a YouTube video. Yeah,
and I understand that. And that's not really a web scene. Bado Methodology. Swedish one with really long, in-depth interviews. I have a subscription for that because I think it's brilliant writing and interesting guests.
They did a really, really good interview with Mortis of Marduk. Yeah. I would fucking love to have that dude on the podcast, but I suspect that is impossible. From all the conversations I've had with everyone who knows him, it's like, don't even try. It's just not.
I'll never say never.
It's like driving up the highway in the wrong direction. Yeah. Now we were talking about agriculture and the like. Are there newer bands that have impressed you?
Yeah, there's a few. They come from time to time. The last thing that really impressed me was like a collaborative. I think it's like a Polish-Swedish collaboration between one of the guys from Kraft and I don't know who else. It's called Eschatology. They did an EP I guess 2 years ago, which is absolutely fucking brilliant. It's kind of like while we're waiting for the next Craft album, this is definitely worth checking out. It's faster, more harsh, and brilliant songwriting. So that impressed me a lot. But that's not really a new band. That's old guys doing a new project. As for new bands, the Hell Butcher album, I think is fun. I think fun is the right word to use. But that again, that's old guys doing a new band.
I was about to say those are old heads as well. I would say, like, you guys, you would fit on a lineup, you know, whether it's a festival lineup or a touring lineup, alongside bands like Darvaza, Mysteriuming, you know, bands like that, really, really well. I think you guys play in a similar, you know, you have maybe not a similar style of black metal. There's similarities for sure, but I think philosophically the approach is quite similar.
Perhaps we actually shared a tour bus with two of the guys from Darvaza for a couple of weeks many years ago. Yeah. So they were sitting in for Gloria Belli at the time. So we did a tour with Gloria Belli from France.
Massively underrated band.
13 years ago, and Jonathan and David from Darvaza was actually playing on that tour. So we know those guys kind of well. So that would be interesting.
Gloria Belli, just as a side note, they put out a record in 2009 called Meet Us at the Southern Sign. The first track on that record, Once in a Blood Red Moon, is one of the fucking best black metal songs, in my opinion, ever recorded. It is pure genius.
He definitely did some kick-ass songs. There's no doubt about it. I had the pleasure of doing a stand-in gig for Gloria Belli many years ago. So I know I actually played some of the songs, and it's interesting guitar-wise as well. So yeah, it's an awesome. Some of those songs are awesome. So kind of I lost interest a little bit. It was too. He was delving too deep into the southern rock thing for my taste.
Yes, I agree.
But it sounds like he's doing something nasty again. He just released a single a couple of weeks ago, I think. So
yeah, I remember clearly getting a promo of Meet Us at the Southern Sign, loving it. And then The Great Southern Darkness came out, and I was massively disappointed. Gators Rumble, Chaos Unfurls, that broke my heart, and I've not listened to anything else they've done since.
No. Sounds like...
like your journey with them.
Pretty much sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
So touring-wise, and I kind of bring up Darvaza, Mysteriuming, bands like that. What, you know, I know you said you guys aren't a particularly actively touring band, but I know you love playing live. Like, are there plans afoot for you guys to do some shows outside of Denmark? I know you've got a handful of gigs already booked for, you know, your native land. Yeah. But outside of Denmark,
we're working on it. It's not as easy as it used to be. We haven't really, I don't think we've been abroad since we played Inferno Festival in 2013. I think that was actually the last time we were abroad. So it's been a while. So I'm just wondering if anyone remembers who we are, or if they died. Who knows? But we definitely feel that the scene currently is extremely saturated. There are a lot of bands, and a lot of good bands, and a lot of bands that are willing to play for nothing. And that is a difficult situation. And one more thing about that is we can see that a lot of the festivals are booked more than a year in advance. So even if we were making ourselves available at this point for the summer season, the festival season 25, not even sure there will be open slots. We're trying to. We are definitely testing the waters and reaching out to whoever we would really like, especially with this new album, like to support it live and also go outside of our native soil and do some shows in wherever people want us.
Where I would love to see you guys is Inferno. I think you mentioned having played there in 2013. My maiden trip to Inferno was this year. I think you guys would suit the vibe and the lineup of that festival brilliantly.
We definitely had fun the last time we were there. So I played a great show on this, I forget what's called, John D, the small venue.
Yeah.
And had a great festival. And it's definitely professional. It's nicely set up and everything. So we would love to come back, but depends who's the flavor of the month.
If I'm in a position to say anything to Jan Martin, I will mention it.
Well, definitely. We know the way.
Sit down with him for lunch. I'll pull the plate away. Like before you get into that, old man.
I think I still have the route tapped into our GPS, so we know how to get there, definitely.
Yeah.
So we would love to. We're working on it currently. We have a handful of shows coming up in the fall, in the first couple in September, and then we have a national festival in early November, and then a gig in later November. So we have 4 or 5 gigs lined up currently, but all on Danish soil. So and Denmark is a fairly small country, so if you do 5-10 shows, you pretty much covered it all. So going somewhere else for a change would be nice, definitely. Spread the message, spread the music. So
I do need to come and visit Denmark at some point, because not for metal reasons, or at least partly for metal reasons, but there's a hi-fi company that I absolutely love called Griffin Audio. They're based out of Denmark. I'm just trying to see what part of Denmark they're based in. But I've had an invite to go to their factory and go for a listening session at the factory, and that is something that I would very, very much like to do. I'm not 100% sure where in Denmark they're based. I did have a friend that went for a listening session as well, and it's him that said, like, if you ever get a chance, definitely do it. That's an interesting thing to me about Denmark. Denmark has a lot of extremely high-end audio. And when I say like high-end audio, I don't mean like something that costs $1,000 or something. Griffin stuff is much more expensive than that. But they also have Vitus. They've got a bunch of really like the highest of the high-end audio stuff in Denmark.
Yeah, and Bang & Olufsen. Definitely more famous for their designs, but it's still high end. It's Danish, and we have TC Electronics, which is really big in the guitar stomp pedal thing, which is also based out of Denmark. So, we know our tech, definitely.
Well, I'll need to see if I can coordinate that visit with seeing you guys play live.
Nice.
Bjørn, this was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And as I said, really, really love the new record, and I'm going to do my bit to make sure that more people hear it, because I think it's fantastic.
That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, brother. A massive thank you to Bjørn for his time. Horned Almighty, of course, is the name of the band that you just heard. The song is Gospels of Sickness, taken from their crushing new album, Contagion Zero, released by Soul Seller Records on July the 5th of this year. A definite contender for the top 30 of 2024. And this band, like I mentioned at the top of the show, is one that flies under far too many radars for my liking, and I aim to be fixing that. Now, folks, I've had a pretty busy week. I actually had my daughter visiting, so most of our time was spent either playing Streets of Rage 4 on the PlayStation 5. We went to Thorpe Park and rode the UK's first ever hypercoaster, Hyperia, which was an absolute blast. All of this to say, I didn't have a chance to listen to any new releases. I know that Inophelion was released. I can't remember if it was this week or the week before. And there's been a couple of decent things that come up. Nothing I've spent enough time with to be able to talk to you about in any great detail. But in keeping with my comment about Horned Almighty being an underappreciated band, I figured I'd give you another Horned Almighty song before we kick off the news rant. This one was taken off the album that came out right before Contagion Zero. It's entitled To Fathom the Master's Grand Design, that was dropped in 2020 through Scarlet Records. To Fathom the Master's Design almost certainly has to be one of the greatest album titles I've ever heard in my entire life. And this is an equally killer song. The track is called Devouring Armageddon. The second of 2 Horned Almighty tracks coming your way this week. That is a song called Devouring Armageddon off the album To Fathom the Master's Grand Design. And I hope that I've done my bit this week to make sure that Horned Almighty is going to be on your regular rotation for at least the remainder of the year. Fantastic band, and a band that almost certainly deserves the universal acclaim by the Legion. Right now, my friends, if you think that the height of bravery is to flop around like a harpooned seal and call it breakdancing, then it's time to hit the bricks. As Marco of Stellar Master Elite joins me for my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
I am here with the great Marco of Stellar Master Elite. It's been about a year, or maybe even over a year since you've been on the podcast.
I can't remember, to be honest.
You should be marking those down in your calendar. And actually, no, you should be taking a photo and putting that in your memories box.
Yeah, or getting every Into the Necrosphere day tattooed.
That would be the ideal. How have you been?
Yeah, I'm all right. Like, what's going on in my life. It's all the stress and whatnot, but I'm okay. I'm getting better, I think.
Oh, that's good. And you're on the mean streets of Belfast at the moment, are you not?
No, I'm just outside of Belfast. I'm in a town called Newtonards, which is like, I don't know, like 15 miles outside Belfast to the east. And yeah, it's a nice little town. I really like it here.
Yeah.
And,
you do know, though, that anti-establishment rhetoric will get you tossed in jail. So if you could please, over the course of the news round, just keep that to a minimum, mate.
No, I'm trying to behave.
I don't know whether you can talk about it in any great detail, but your plans to move from Germany and also from Luxembourg and come here, is that still underway?
It's still on the way, but the problem is the visa regulations here, to be honest, in the UK, that you have to like earn a certain amount of money, and then you have to pay the NHS surcharge and whatnot. It's all a bit complicated, to be honest. Thanks to your glorious Brexit. Thank you very much for that, you asshole.
Yeah.
But
with the current government, I suspect that may possibly get turned around at some point. So you might be in luck.
Yeah, but I hope so, really. But I think it's like super hard because I come from the aerospace sector, right? And I think like up here, like especially Northern Ireland, it's a bit tricky. I mean, you have some companies like dealing with aerospace and defense and whatnot, but I still I've contacted several recruitment agencies and whatnot and sent them my CV, but I think like the area I'm specialized in is kind of not that present here. So I have to look for something else, like which could probably like fit my CV somehow,
I think the problem is, especially with very specialist market sectors, in my experience, having worked in that racket now for a period of time, recruiters will go for especially agency side recruiters, they'll go for what's easiest. So they'll just try and fill things they'll fill jobs that are easy to fill, and that's basically where they focus their time. Like, you're best off just reaching out to businesses that are hiring for similar skill sets to you, just reaching out to them directly. And most likely they'll have an internal recruitment team that can help you. Yeah,
that's what I learned about that place here as well. That's most of the companies, they just don't put their like job openings online.
Yeah,
they just like want you to apply directly to them, which makes it increasingly hard because I don't know who is looking for someone, and
just send out a blanketed assault. You just fire off CVs to all the companies that you want to work for, and see who contacts you.
I mean, there's not many companies that would fit my skill set here, Yeah.
You wouldn't consider packing the family up and maybe traveling down south, maybe coming into the UK proper rather than Belfast or something like that. Maybe looking at something around London, or even, around my neck of the woods, you've got a couple of companies that conceivably might have something that would be within your wheelhouse.
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing is that I want to have a change in my life, like a radical change, which is like bitterly needed. You know about my past and whatnot. We don't have to discuss it here, but for me, it's like the main thing is like coming home and just settle, and especially about the past 4 years, what was going on in my life, and I just want a bit of stability, and traveling around all the time wouldn't be that great, to be honest. So I'm actively looking for something which is local here, which I can maybe reach by bus or train, and that would be great. Like, if some of you viewers have suggestions to me, then hit me up.
Yeah, anyone in Northern Ireland who wants to help hook a brother up, let us know. All right, let's dive into it. So we kick off on Metal Storm as always, and the first headline that's grabbing my attention: Kanonenfieber have shared a new song. It says here, as part of their upcoming studio record, and I'm going to apologize to you in advance because I'm going to mangle your language here.
Der Maulwurf.
Die Urkatastrophe.
Do you know what der Maulwurf means?
Do I know what der Maulwurf means? No.
Yeah, the mole.
The mole?
Yeah, the mole.
Oh, all right. And the Urkatastrophe, that would mean something about a catastrophe, I assume?
Urkatastrophe means like the core of all catastrophes, like the beginning of all catastrophes.
Okay, all right, gotcha. All right. Anyway, it says here that the album is due out on.
I'm sorry to jump in again. We say Urkatastrophe, actually based like linked to the First World War, because it was the First World War and nobody knew something about that extent by then, so we call it like the beginning of all catastrophes.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, because kind of Kanonenfieber's whole focus is World War One. So yeah, that would make an awful lot more sense. I mean, what are your thoughts on them as a band generally?
I mean, it might be technically okay, but I don't get their the theme of what they are singing about, because I'm of course, I'm German, I'm branded with that. I had my great grandpa was in Verdun fighting, for example, and it's always like a two-sided sword for me, because on the one hand I understand how you can make music about that, but on the other hand I have personal affection to that, and that's what it's kind of personally affecting me, and that's not something nice,
Yeah, I feel increasingly, and I've heard a couple of songs, I've listened to a couple of songs on the news rant that I thought were all right, but increasingly I kind of feel like they're the Timu equivalent, or the Timu version of 1914. I was almost about to say 1349, definitely not 1349, but yeah, they're like a heavily Xeroxed 1914 is how they sound to me.
Yeah, but it's the same with 1914 for me as well. I can't get into the matter, saying I love it, because the topic is way too personal for me.
Yeah.
I guess you understand that, but
no, of course.
Musical wise, they are all right. But but I don't like that they kind of glorify that time, because it was a shit time, and that's why I'm always a bit reluctant to them, if that's the right word.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear what the song sounds like. Like I said, not a band that has necessarily blown my socks off up to this point in time. But let's hear whether Der Maulwurf is worth a shit. To me, this is one of those things where I can hear this band will have its audience. That audience will not include me. It's just boring as fuck.
It's just lame. I kind of get, sorry, I kind of get what they're trying to say, but it's just not like speaking to me somehow.
Yeah, musically it does absolutely nothing for me. It feels laborious, and you've got that sort of clean sung chorus kind of thing, which is, it feels like I've heard it thousands of times before. Then you have that segue between the chorus and the next verse with the bass playing. And I think the best thing you can say there is the production is clean and decent.
Yeah,
everything else about it feels like it just shouldn't be there. It feels tacked on. It's like, like Jim Carrey on Ace Ventura. I don't know when last you watched that. There's a clear thing if you watch that movie, he's trying way too hard to be funny in the movie. They're trying way too hard to be epic on this song.
I mean, like on the other hand, I'm absolutely not a fan of German vocals ever. I don't know. I mean, like I recently asked that my girlfriend as well, right? All the great songs in the world that have ever been produced are in English. And I asked her how it is if you listen to music which is like sung in your native language all the time. And she said to me, like, yeah, that's kind of normal. But I would fucking freak out if all the great songs, if all like Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin and whatnot would be in German. I just can't wrap my head around it, somehow, and that's the same with me. Like if I hear like German lyrics, like Kanonenfieber and whatnot. Last month I went to Dublin. No, 2 months ago I went to Dublin to see Rammstein, and I saw all that, like 50,000 people like absolutely going nuts about them. But I also knew that like 90% of them will never get what Till is singing about. And that it's just beyond me. And that's they might be great, like lyric wise, but it's just not for me because maybe I understand too much of it. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, it does. I've often thought about the fact that, so much of the music that we listen to, I don't quite agree with you about all the great songs being in English. There's a lot of fucking badass songs in Swedish. I mean, not Swedish, Norwegian. And of course, I'm a very big Rammstein fan. I'm just looking, by the way, at what the set list was for when you saw Rammstein. They played Popper, which is complete genius.
I think the set list. I think the set list was like on that whole tour over the past 5 years. I think it was the same at every gig.
Oh no, it was different when I saw them.
Oh,
so
really?
they didn't play this Rum 4 song, which is a shit track. I wouldn't have played it. They started with Was ich liebe, which is genius.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you saw them, a couple of the genius songs that they played, Keine Lust, Mein Herz brennt, Puppe, Deutschland. I fucking love that like DJ intro with Deutschland. That's brilliant.
I went to the shitter then.
You went to take a wank.
Yeah.
Du riechst so good, brilliant. Ich will, brilliant. Yeah. But so anyway, getting back to the point that you made about hearing music in like non-English music, why do you think it sounds so weird? Because like for me, I mean, I the theory I have, it's in part because at least up to a certain point over the course of the last 100 years, North America won the culture war, which is why there's this accepted thing that almost all the entertainment we consume, all the music we consume is all in English. I think that's changed over the last couple of years. I think increasing, I feel like it's changing.
I think my main concern about it is that it sounds too familiar and that it is nothing like absolutely special to me. Because like when you have German lyrics and whatnot, it's in your mother's tongue, and well, in mine, but when I listen to it, I don't get anything like arty out of it. Even though German is it can be a kind of poetic language, with like back then with Goethe, Schiller, and whatnot. That's beautiful to read, but I don't like to hear it.
Well, I guess I guess I'm the same about Afrikaans, to be fair. And Afrikaans is not my mother tongue. In my house, my mom is English, my dad's Afrikaans. I only ever spoke English in the house. There's about 3 or 4 people that I'm very close friends with that I speak Afrikaans to, but that's about the only Afrikaans I speak. But that being said, I don't like to hear Afrikaans lyrics, and I suspect it might be the same. I might have the same reflexive reaction to it that you do to hearing German.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. We had to. Me and my girlfriend had to talk about it like some days ago, and I said like I absolutely hate Germans abroad when I see them. I'm trying to get to get away when I see Germans. I'm like, holy fuck, why? I just can't I hate Germans abroad. It's an absolute disaster.
Why do you hate them?
Because they always act the same abroad. Like you either have your like core antisocials, or you have your super I'm so educated and but I know things better than the people in the country I visit and and I just don't like it. I try to stay away as far as possible from them. Really, you have other nations that are example, the Irish are an example, right? When Irish meet Irish people abroad, they're like, yo, you're Irish, hi, how are you? And hug and whatnot. And yeah, I'm just not that kind of guy. I want to stay away from Germans.
Again, I kind of know what you mean. I'm not, especially when I moved to the UK, there was this real, like the South African scene, right? You had South Africans that stuck with only being friends with and socializing with South Africans, only going to South African restaurants, only eating South African food, only doing South African things.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is so fucking idiotic. Like, why would you come to another country and essentially try and recreate the country that you left?
It is absolutely stupid. You know, like when I was in Vietnam, I think it was, when was it, 2018 and whatnot. I was in Hanoi, like running around in Hanoi, like enjoying the city and whatnot. And I met Germans there, and they were really desperately trying to find German beer and German food in fucking Hanoi. And I was just sitting there on the corner on my tiny little stool and was eating the soup and then drinking the local stuff, you know, because that's how I am. But most of it's a topic we could talk on for like, I don't know, 2 hours, but it's just, your typical German tourist is a stubborn idiot. And that's what I try to...
Oh, there we go. There's the headline for this episode. Marco of Stellmaster Elite says, Germans are stubborn idiots.
Yeah, they are. Germans are assholes.
All right, let's move on to the next track. I'm going to give the new Marilyn Manson thriller a skip. Ulf Hedner are streaming a new music video. It says here, Norwegian black metal purveyors Ulf Hedner have shared a new video clip for Heimat, the song that is part of the band's latest album, False Metal. The clip was recorded and edited by Svein Terje Solvang. You correct me if I'm wrong. In 2022 and part of 2023, the trend seemed to be, when it came to certain black metal bands, that all their music videos needed to feature at least one senile old man running around in his underpants on the beach. And then that went away and it became all about farming. You know, it's always like two men, you know, father and son or two mates living in some fucking derelict shack up in the mountain, plowing and raking the fields. And I'm getting that from this thumbnail here as well.
Like the shed of Guard's grandpa when in that documentary.
Something like that. Yeah, Ulf Hedner, not really a band I'm familiar with, but again, the fact that there seems to be on the band photo both a pitchfork in the one guy's hand and on the ground there seems to be a rake lying, suggests to me that ancient farming technique is the theme of their lyrics.
The photo is pretty well cropped as well. But have you ever heard about them? About the band name? I have never heard about them.
All right, well, let's hear what it sounds like. I think that may be the greatest embarrassment to the Norwegian nation since Deep Calleth Upon Deep was released. That is utterly abysmal.
That's fucking atrocious. You know, that's my... I mean, if someone would ask me to describe the Wacken Festival, I would send that song to them.
You know? I've never been to Wacken, actually.
I've been, but that's like 15 years ago or something. But yeah, it's just a huge circus, and that sounds like circus to me. I'm sorry.
I would question how you actually even call this black metal. I don't think it's black metal. Vocals might be, but I mean, yeah, I think black metal is a bit of a misnomer. I notice on Metal Archives, they've been known by different names, this band. So they were, between 1993 and 1995, they were known as Skigger. They put out one EP under that moniker called Entrail. And then they changed their name to Mithrim in 1995. That stayed as is until it seems like 2003. There's like various changes here. And then in 2003, they changed to Ulfvedner. 2 albums out so far. The debut received 70% on Metal Archive. This one, in my mind, based on this song, should receive 0%.
But what label are they on right now? Don't tell me Nuclear Blast or Napalm.
No, Hellstain Productions.
Oh, no. Okay, never heard of it.
And Hellstain Productions also have, really mostly other bands that I don't really know all that well. Diabolica, Hymnus, Infernal, Chiron, Swart Lotus, and Ir. Ir, I think we listened to on the podcast a while back. Yeah, we did, because they've got as a matter of fact, we definitely listened to it because I played it on the show. It's fucking brilliant, actually. Ir. They've got an EP out called Monolist. Oh, it must be 2 different people that signed them, because I have no idea how you listen to this and think it's worth adding to your roster. It's fucking awful.
Imagine that the customer that buys this record and is actually sitting down on the sofa and enjoys this.
Yeah.
I mean,
person who listens to it and says, "This is fucking badass."
Yeah,
guys that look like they all received fucking wedgies up to their ears every day at school, making black metal.
I can like the customer of bands like that is like that's how I depict like fucking Milhouse from The Simpsons, you know. Like,
you're right. I tell you, the target audience for that band is people that complain about Achilles being on festival lineups. All right, Ripped to Shreds have got a brand new track out called Force Fed. It says here, death metalers Ripped to Shreds are streaming Force Fed, another new preview track off their next record, Sanity. The latter hits the streets on September the 27th via Relapse Records. People lost their ever-loving minds over that last Ripped to Shreds record, Jubian. Was that one that was on your radar at all?
I really don't know them, but I think a Relapse band could be potentially great.
Well, I did spend some time with Jubian, and I liked it very much. But it came out in October of 2022, and there was a time of very heavy traffic. So there were just so many other things that was coming out that, had my attention. I kind of feel like I do need to go back to that album and listen to it properly. But either way, I've not heard the first single off of the Sanchi record yet. So let's give Force Fed a listen.
It's old school as fuck. I love it.
Mm. There's no getting away from the fact that they named their band after a Terrorizer song. Yeah. This has that similar Terrorizer vibe to it. Quite simple in the way that the song is constructed. The riff is pretty simple. No one's trying to show off their technical brilliance here at all, but it's fucking catchy, really well played, really well performed. I think just every single element here just clicks for me. I think it's a great song.
But Simple does it.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like super technical to create great music, and that was always my credo as well. With like when I'm playing drums and whatnot, I had a discussion like some days ago as well. Like, what does it bring to you if you like performing like athletics on your drums?
Yeah.
If you can absolutely bring it by being simple, being simple and hitting hard is absolutely my credo, and that's what I'm like living in my playing as well.
Yeah, I would agree. You can never sacrifice emotion for technicality. If you're so technically proficient that the way that you express yourself through that instrument just happens to be very technical. Like let's take, I think a great example of this to me is Trey from Morbid Angel. He is a phenomenal guitar player, and the way that he expresses himself through his instrument just happens to be, you look at the transcriptions of everything he does, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, how do you even play this? That I completely get.
I was never the kind of musician that. I mean, I never pushed myself to the limits as like, I don't know, like a John Longstreth or like a Flo Monnier or like a Pete Sandoval or something like that. I mean, these guys are they're great and whatnot. But I mean, my role model all the time was like Dave Lombardo, because he hits hard, he plays hard, and he's just not giving a fuck about anything, And I think for me that's the core of like being like musical, And if it, I mean, but with all these technical guys, like it somehow, for me, at least for my taste or something, like it gets out of hand when it becomes too technical and it becomes a sport and not playing music.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying. As I said, for me, it needs to, like, it always has to be emotions first, technicality second. If how you can express yourself in a, emotionally resonant way, it just happens to be technical, great. If not, don't try and push yourself. Don't try and show us how well you can play your instrument. But then when I listen to the song, I just go, because that's effort wasted, in my opinion. And anyway, bringing it full circle, they don't do that on this song. I think they absolutely nail it. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a great.
On the topic of Terrorizer, have you seen any of the clips floating around of the shows the Terrorizer have been playing?
I did. And
dude, it looks like, fucking badass.
I mean, like I know their singer Brian. Like when I was working at it during my A levels, right? Like I was working in that youth center in my hometown Trier, and that's when Brian and his former band Inferna Ian played there, right? So I was like supervising the computer room for like well, let me start. Like it was a youth center in like a kind of ghetto of my town, right? So I was supervising that computer center there and to give the kids a chance to play their games and surf the internet a bit, right? So when I was like having a look after it, that they don't open porn sites or like doing all sorts of crazy shit on the internet, right? And that one day we had Inferna Ian there. I think they were supporting, don't let me lie, I think they were supporting Napalm Death or something. Mm-hmm. And that guy walked into I had some kind of boss office there, and he was asking if he could like lend a cable and whatnot, and I thought, yeah. And I said, like, are you a guy of that band? And he was like, yeah, I'm the singer of Inferna Ian, and like he was a great dude. And from that moment on, I saw his like. He was singing for fucking what was the name of the band?
So he was in. He's been in Inferno Neon, Nervo Chaos. He was in Vital Remains for a
Vital
short period
Remains.
of time.
All right,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, and I thought like Vital Remains, like like one of my favorite EPs ever is Forever Underground.
Mm.
That's absolutely amazing. And I saw that the guy was like hired for that's Vital Remains hired him and whatnot, and I thought like, holy fuck, I met that guy really and he was like an absolutely charming dude.
Max Cavalera. It says here, Nail Bomb, the short-lived 90s industrial thrash metal band featuring Max Cavalera and Alex Newport, will reunite for its first show in more than 2 decades on November the 9th at the Marquee Theater in Tempe, Arizona, as part of the Max Cavalera Dynasty show, headlined by Soulfly, Incite, Go Ahead and Die, Healing Magic, and Jade Helm. For unknown reasons, however, Newport is not involved in this reunion. I don't actually think Newport makes music anymore, which I suspect is probably the reason why he's not going to play live with them. But I'm fucking stoked that they are doing a Nail Bomb reunion.
Yeah.
I think Point Blank is easily one of my favorite things that Max Cavalera was ever associated with.
Point Blank was a fucking genius album. And that cover alone, like I still can remember when I went to my local record shop when it was still open. And of course it's not open anymore, but I saw that LP with the cover with that like gun to the head, and I was like, holy fuck, I need this.
No, I would also challenge anybody to tell me or to name an album that has a more powerful intro than like an intro track and just intro generally than Point Blank. Let's just give it a quick listen, because I think in terms of a song that sets the tone for what you're about to hear over the course of 45 minutes, or however long Point Blank is, I don't think there's a song that is better than Wasting Away. Fucking genius. Absolute genius. As I said, one of the best songs to kick off a record that I've ever heard in my entire life, because it sets the tone for the album so well.
It's I mean, I think we are both suckers for hardcore punk, like Chromax and that, but that's that's just in the row with the great stuff, in my opinion,
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I hope they're going to do more Nail Bomb shows, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they only do it the one time. This is going to be in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's a fair bit for me to travel. But either way, I've definitely look, I used to make a lot of jokes about Max Cavalera's lyrics and all that sort of thing on the podcast. But I've developed an awful lot of love for the man, especially in view of these Sepultura re-recordings. I didn't in a million years think that they were going to do as fantastic of a job with Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions as they did. And then they did Schizophrenia, and it was like, oh my God.
I mean, you heard me raving about that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's absolutely top-notch, on point, really.
Mm.
And it doesn't even the problem with re-recordings, sometimes is if you have to, for example, the re-recording of Exodus's first album, right? That was absolute shite.
Yeah.
That was that was nothing. And I had the same fear about the Sepultura re-recordings. But I got pleasantly surprised with that because it sounds absolutely badass and absolutely done right on the point, really. And I think it still has the spirit of the 80s, but it sounds modern, which is it was an absolutely great job of them, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I know there are various members of the Legion who disagree, but I am, based on how good these last two re-recordings were, I'm absolutely fine with them redoing Beneath the Remains.
I'm just waiting for them to re-record Beneath the Remains, really. Yeah. Holy fuck, that will be, I think we are in for a treat there.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's check out what else we've got. Funeral have got a new song online. Yesteryear, the second advanced single from Funeral's forthcoming music output, Gospel of Bones, has premiered online in the form of a visualizer video. The Norwegians will unleash Gospel of Bones on October the 18th via Season of Mist. Let's hear what it sounds like.
Washed out with those cleansing tears of yesteryear, tear upon year. Never-ending, seal the perpetual fear. Without limit, downward
I can only take so much of this. I get there's going to be people that like this. I don't. It feels to me like it's a Xerox of My Dying Bride.
Are you a fan of opera?
No. There's one opera song I like. It's off the Banshees of Inisherin soundtrack, and it's really only because I like the scene very much. But you know what I find puzzling, though? In this band, they've got Anders Eek, who used to be in Mørkskov, and they also have former member of Cold, Stian Krabel. But this is not for me, mate. I like My Dying Bride. I love Paradise Lost.
I mean, like I love mellow music like that a lot. And I'm a sucker for mellow, well done music, but I think that's too much for me.
Are you a fan of My Dying Bride, by the way?
Depends. I have to be in the mood.
Yeah. It wasn't pre-planned, but it's a perfect segue to talk about the new High Parasite single, because that features Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride. But sorry, complete your thought.
Like My Dying Bride is the same cup of coffee for me. Like as for example, Morning Beloved. You know, like you have to be in the mood to enjoy it. But then I have to be really down and like contemplating about my life and whatnot. That's when I can hear them. But I would never like put it on my stereo just as an in between, or when I want to listen to good music, because it's just too emotional somehow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I must confess, I really like. I mean, I love My Dying Bride.
But are you ever like putting on My Dying Bride just when you want to listen to good music?
Yeah, I do. I would say they're more of a winter band than they are a summer band. You know, it's beautiful sunshine outside now. They're a band that I will agree with you. You need to take them in, I think, when the mood is right.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolute moody music. Same as Typo Negative, for example. You know, I can just listen to Typo Negative when I feel absolutely down and sad.
Yeah, Typo Negative I can listen to always.
that's when they hit my my imaginary G spot. You know.
What I will say, by the way, Immortal Binding, the new My Dying Bride record, if you haven't listened to it yet, it's one of the greatest comebacks that, I mean, I know they've not really had big missteps, but the Ghost of Orion was disappointing, and the more I listened to it, the more disappointing it became. Immortal Binding is just such a great return to form. Sadly, though, seems like all is not well in that camp. I've spoken before about the fact that I suspect this band we're about to listen to, High Parasite, has something to do with that, and I might be completely wrong. But High Parasite is the newly formed gothic doom metal act formed by My Dying Bride vocalist Aaron Stainthorpe. High Parasite Stream Wasn't Human single from their debut album record Forever We Burn, due out on the 27th of September via Spine Farm Records and Candlelight Records. This was also produced by Greg McIntosh, so both singles we've heard so far I've enjoyed. First one grabbed me maybe a bit more than the second. It's got a very, very strong Paradise Lost vibe to it as well. Which, you know, I love Paradise Lost.
I mean, I have loads of love for Alan Stanthorpe, really, because he's a genius.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He really is. Like, yeah, but for me, it's mood music. It really is. Like, it's nothing I can hear. Like when I'm feeling, like when I'm feeling great, I listen to like thrash or black metal. But that's something I would turn on when I'm absolutely down. And yeah.
Well, see what you. I'm gonna play this new single by High Parasite, and let's see how you feel about this. I like this. But
that's what I expected. It's moody as fuck.
Yeah, it's definitely moody, but it's somewhat more upbeat to My Dying Bride. It's got that very, very heavy Paradise Lost influence on it. But the thing that I come back to when I hear this, same as with the other two singles, when I listen to this, and I mean, you can't really tell from a music video, but just from what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like Aaron Stainthorpe is having the absolute time of his life in this band. Yeah. And I know conversely, he finds My Dying Bride incredibly difficult. You know, The Ghost of Orion nearly wasn't recorded because he found it so difficult to do. I don't know what the situation was with Mortal Binding. We touched on it when Andrew was on the podcast, but, possibly not everything was said there for obvious reasons. I definitely feel like this may be the reason why we've seen all of My Dying Bride's touring dates for this year cancelled. It's because they seem to be really down with this band.
Sorry, I just have to close the window because the dogs from the neighbor are just going crazy. I just
no worries.
We'll be back, all right? I hope it's better now.
Yeah, it's fine. I have Bailey making such a racket in the background most of the time. You don't really, dogs are a common occurrence on this podcast. But yeah, I like this. And I wouldn't say it's top notch, but it gets a thumbs up for me.
No, it's all right. It's great. Really but as I said, I think I sent you the link to that Tar Pond album as well, right?
Yeah.
That's moody music as fuck as well. Like that's what I listen to when I want to cry in my bed alone.
Wasp is the music I listen to when I want to commit the act of love with my fiance.
Really?
This was an interesting one, though, because I don't know whether you saw, but Death Angel pulled out of the upcoming Wasp US tour. And then Will Carroll posted something, and maybe we'll find this over on the Democrats Guide to Rock Music, because they have, from memory, the full statement on there. But he basically says something to the effect of, I have one word, and that's betrayal. And then
But are you really shaking to Wasp?
No, mate, no, not Wasp. Rammstein. Rammstein is my love-making music. I can't find... Oh, there we go. Right. Death Angel drummer says it's pretty obvious why his band pulled out of the Wasp tour. The word betrayal comes to mind. So he doesn't directly say it, but it sounds to me like this may be due to the fact that Mark Ozagueda of Death Angel has preferred to be touring with Kerry King's band instead of going out on this Wasp tour. Just based on how pissed off Will Carroll is, I would suggest it may be a while before we see another Death Angel album, let alone a tour.
Yeah, but I mean, fuck Wasp, but the singer of Death Angel is doing a pretty great job at Kerry King's band, right?
He is. I mean, I don't like Kerry King's band, but I agree with you. He's doing a good job with it.
Yeah.
Here's something that I will say, because people will look at this and go, he just did it for the money. Like a Death Angel diehard is going to go, he's a sellout. He's just doing it for the money, blah, blah, blah. But I think what might get missed in that argument is the fact that, and I wonder whether this is not true for a fair few bands that are getting on in years. Mark is, I'm going to double check on this, he is 55 years old. Right? He's 10 years away from retirement, and I cannot imagine that he's been packing away huge amounts of money from Death Angel sales. And certainly I think the royalties right now are not quite what they would need to be in order for him to retire comfortably. And I seriously think that when some of these decisions get made, that people will look at and go, oh, that's a sellout, or this is, this is the guy's, let his bandmates down. Yes, all of that's true. But your motivation when you reach, your mid to late 50s begins to change, because you suddenly realize it's not going to be any fun. It's not going to be cool being an old age pensioner and working behind the fucking deli counter at the supermarket or working at McDonald's to make ends meet.
No, I mean,
what do you think of that?
I'm not there yet. I mean, I'm 37. Right now,
I'm 44, mate, and I think about retirement an awful lot. Not just because I would like to retire early, but because I'm fucking terrified of what happens when I retire.
But I'm working for my company for 11 years straight, right? Through all ups and downs, and it's absolutely fucking bugging me already. My dad, for example, right? My dad started working when he was 15 years old. And he worked for that very company he was working in. He was a technician for copy machines and fax machines and whatnot. And he worked there for 40 years straight. And he never complained. I think that's something that's gotten missing in today's society, right? That you commit to one thing, and that will bring the bread on your table. I mean, but being an active touring musician and maintaining that for 30, 40 years is like increasingly harder, to be honest. Like, I'm sorry if
well, this is my point, right?
So speaking totally out of context right now, but
yeah, no, that's fine. But this is my point, right? I can understand where Mark may be coming from, because I would expect, and again, I might be wrong, I would expect going on tour with Kerry King is going to be far more lucrative for him than going on tour with Death Angel.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with all these like aging bands, so to speak, like they have to see where the money is, and that's what they are doing. And you know, and I mean, like, my point was like having that, comparing it to like a normal like work life, you know. I mean, like in the end, it's you can compare it, right? Because it's the same. But a life as a musician is just increasingly harder.
Yeah.
Somehow, you know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But yeah, so, you know, he's going to get a whole bunch of shit for making that decision. But as much as I am not necessarily the biggest fan of Kerry King's music, I get where he's coming from, because I really do think that there comes a point where if you're in his shoes, you're 10 years away from when in theory, you should be retiring. You must surely start thinking, okay, what's going to become of me when I'm old?
You can think of Kerry King what you want, right? But he's still a legend in the metal scene, right? Like, because he was a member of Slayer, and you know, like Slayer is like, holy fuck, Slayer is just Slayer.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'll tell you who else are legends: Horna, and there is a new Horna single out which I want to listen to. I've had many members of the Legion already asking me whether I've listened to it, and I have consciously steered clear of it because I want to keep my views fresh on it. I love the previous Horna record. So the new track is called Hymni I, or Hymni 1. I'm sure it's as fucking grim as everything else they've released. Let's hear what it sounds like. Immediate top notch. That is fucking brilliant.
It's fucking brilliant, but I wonder why they put up these like Finnish lyrics, because no one understands Finnish.
I honestly think that's just kind of a Finnish pride thing. Which is, I think that might be the reason. I mean, I agree with you. No one understands it, but
I mean, like the song is top notch, but why would you like put out a Finnish lyric video if you know your target audience is like based somewhere around Europe and maybe South America and North America, you know, like because no one is like huh?
Just to get the kids singing along, mate. Bring some education into their lives. I think it's fucking excellent. Exactly nice. as I expected. I think Spellgoth's vocals sound awesome. The riff is fucking gnarly. The production is great. had absolutely no doubt this was going to be great when I heard it's coming out. The album is called Nix Hymnasia Jolle, which again, apologies to everyone in Finland because I know I fucked that up. The album gets released on September the 13th. So very much looking forward to that. There's another one I want to listen to as well. It's actually on the screen, which is why I'm reminded of it. I know you'll really be keen on hearing it also. Striper, When We Were Kings.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I'm only kidding. Defeated Sanity, The Odor of Sanctity. A lot of people have been raving about this all over the socials. So let's hear what it sounds like. You know what? Season of Mist have had a pretty good run this year of putting out, some really fucking killer brutal death metal records. I don't know how into the last Brodequin you got, Harbinger of Woe, but I loved it. I mean, even though that's not the kind of music that I would naturally gravitate towards, I thought that record was fucking phenomenal.
I was never into Brodequin, really, but I really like good death metal, but Brodequin was never one of the bands I would go for.
I would strongly suggest you check out that new Harbinger of Woe record.
I know all of their records, of course, but that's something I would. Yeah, I mean, for me, there's when I listen to death metal, for me it's Morbid Angel, Cryptopsy, and that's about it. I'm not a huge death metal guy, but when I go for music, I go for black metal.
What do you think of Defeated Sanity?
Yeah, it was all right. It was okay for me.
I like it. It's man's music. It's music that will definitely be on the gym playlist. I like the vibe of this.
The most striking death metal album I listened in maybe 15 years was the last Tetragrammarside record.
Oh yeah, I remember you were a big fan of that.
Holy fuck, that's just so up my alley. It's unreal. It's
So I tell you what we'll do to finish up this week's news rant. I had a couple of people on the socials tell me that I need to check out this list. The most death metal of all singers on the face of the earth, Alyssa Whitegluts of Arch Enemy.
I already see you did the Arch Enemy.
She has selected her top 11 favorite death metal vocalists of all time. And there's a couple of very interesting selections here. So at 11, she's got Joe Duplantier of Gojira.
That's not one of these lists is death metal.
It's pretty dreadful. At number 10, she's got Michael Ackerfeld. Now, I do agree Michael Ackerfeld's death metal vocals are very cool, especially on Bloodbath.
But he's not a death metal musician. Come on.
Not per se, no.
Fuck, no.
Well, it gets more interesting. At number 9, Devin Townsend. So at number 8, Bonnie Greenway. You arguably death metal. He's fucking badass. Yeah. At number 7, Nurgle. At number
who is Nurgle anyway?
Well, I assume it's this person who wrote this on Reddit just can't spell, and it's Nurgle from Behemoth.
Nurgle. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Holy fuck. Okay.
At number 6, it's Chuck Billy. So
yeah, that's the most famous death metal.
Well, again, I would say in her defense, he on Demonic mostly does death metal vocals, and he sounds fucking cool doing it. So, you know, I'm not going to hate on her for that choice. At number 5, Mr. Death Metal himself, Corey Taylor, the Professor Corey Taylor.
I will not even comment on that. Really, like
number 4, Phil Anselmo. You could make an argument for Phil Anselmo based off the back of Scour. You could make an argument for him being a black metal vocalist, but death metal, I mean, what the fuck is she smoking? At number 3, Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder. At number 2, Randy Blythe. And then at number 1, Angela Gosso.
Yeah, that's an absolute.
I mean, shambles, mate. Total shambles. Poser Central. So in the name of slaying posers, I'm going to put you on the spot. Your 3 favorite death metal vocalists.
My 3 favorite death metal vocalists. All right. I think number one would be Chris Barnes in his old Cannibal Corpse days, right?
Oh, really?
Then at number 2, I would have. Holy fuck, that's difficult. It really is. Like, but I think Dave Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
And then
any particular release that Dave Ingram was on that you think is the cream of the crop?
No, I mean like all the stuff he did back in the 90s that was like absolutely wild. And then of course like Carl Willits from Bolt Thrower. I think that would be my favorite.
So I always, my definition of favorite is whatever pops into your head first. That to me, that's technically, that should be your favorite because that's what you think of immediately. So for me, without spending too much time thinking about it, I would say Glenn Benton on the first Deicide record is my favorite death metal performance of all time. And I think he's if you just take him on the strength of Deicide and Legion, he's the best death metal vocalist of all time. Then I would probably put in Ross Dolan of Immolation. I think he's absolutely incredible. And I would put in Frank Mullen of Suffocation off the back, particularly of Pierce from Within. I think Pierce from Within is a masterful death metal performance.
Oh, yes.
Like
Definitely.
All the words are very clearly enunciated. There's great rhythm in his voice. He's fucking mean as shit. So yeah, those would be my immediate 3 favorites. I'd say modern day Sam Bean of Werewolves is definitely up on the list. I think John Gallagher, just for the fact that he sounds like somebody injected about 12 times the amount of testosterone that should be legally allowed in a human being into somebody and said, go ahead and record a song. Yeah, so those dudes would all be there. I'm a big fan of David Vincent. I really like David Vincent on Blessed Are the Sick. Like, I feel Blessed Are the Sick was some of the best vocals he ever recorded.
And I mean, like Dave Ingram, all he did for Benediction was, Benediction was, I think, one of the first death metal bands I ever listened to in my life. And I think Benediction is still one of the greatest, right? And then, of course, I forgot Martin van Troon for Asphyx.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say, I knew you were going to throw that one in there. Yeah. Martin was on, he did For Victory as well, did he not?
Yeah.
The Bolt Throw record.
Yeah.
Which is also absolutely superb. I'm trying to think, who would I throw in of the old guard? I'm trying to think who immediately comes to mind. I mean, I love Bonnie Greenway, but I particularly love Bonnie Greenway in like post 2000, like Enemy of the Music Business.
Barney,
upwards.
I mean, like Barney, I always like. I always separate like Napalm Death from death metal because Napalm Death are mostly grind. In my opinion.
No, that's true. That's true, and that's a fair assessment. I mean, I would most certainly want to call out John Tardy just because I think he's so unique. and especially on Cause of Death and the End Complete.
He's
a fucking badass, absolute badass. I mean, you know, like a song like "Killing Time." It's just, I mean, that's man's music. That there's no other way to describe it. That's man's music.
Absolutely, really.
But I think Alyssa Whiteglutz, not necessarily an authority on this on this topic.
No, that's just a bad joke. I'm sorry. You don't even comment on that.
No. Let's just wrap up with one final question, because I know it will be on the lips of many members of the Legion. Stellar Master Elite, I've demanded a new album for many years now. What's going on with the band?
All right. I can tell that the last years for both of us have been fucking horrible. And I mean, you know what was going on, and I want to spare all of that shit to your listeners, right? But we are back on track, and I've written lyrics. My girlfriend wrote lyrics as well, which we are going to use because she's an absolute awesome writer. And we are constantly in our practice room to develop new things, and we already have. I think, don't let me lie, I think about 25 minutes recorded material right now.
Awesome.
And I've showed you a bit of it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, the clip that you sent me was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And you're just working it out. And for my taste, we are just trying to reinterpret the last 4 years for us, how they have been for us. I mean, it was shit times, you know about that, you know, and it was shit times for my bandmate as well. But I think we are getting there and finding the right mood and the right sphere of us to record new music again. And it's taking place. It's happening. It's slow, but it's happening.
Well, again, as I said, I heard a clip. I absolutely loved it. I know that people that listen to this podcast really love your music, and I know these folks are all looking forward to it with bated breath. Brother, thank you so much for your time. It was awesome catching up with you again. Let's not leave it so long in the future.
No.
I hope to speak to you again very soon.
Yes, I'm the Arch Deacon of the Into the Necrosphere.
But say, the Arch Deacon of the Necrosphere. All right, dude. Take care of yourself.
It was a pleasure. I speak to you soon. Okay.
Episode 238 of Into the Necrosphere is in the books, my friends. A big thank you to Marco of Stellar Master Elite for his time. A massive thank you to Bjørn, a.k.a. Hellpig of Horned Almighty, for his time. Both will be featured on Into the Necrosphere again in the future, no doubt. Next week's guest is to be confirmed, but in the diary right now, I've got interviews with King Fowley of Deceased, who many of you have asked me to get on the podcast. And, you know, I'm a man who likes to please his audience. And I've also got Chris Norton of Winterfilleth and a couple of others in the pipeline. It's going to be a very exciting couple of months on Into the Necrosphere, and it is largely thanks to every one of you. I'm going to play out with an oldie but a goodie, as they say. Off the album Ceremony of Opposites, this is Samael with a track called Crown. I remember when I first got hold of this album, I walked in the pissing down rain in the middle of winter in South Africa for over 4 miles to the post office to go and collect my nuclear blast box. But when I got this album home and I listened to it for the first time, I was absolutely blown away. So if you haven't heard the song for a while, hopefully this reminds you of just how good Samael were in, you know, what I think was their peak. Whatever it is that you are doing, my friends, and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.